It's been hard to believe it's exactly 2 years since we made it from quarantine on the Diamond Princess after a 16-day marvelous cruise. On day 16, the day we were getting ready to leave the night before, we were informed that a passenger had gotten off the ship in Hong Kong and had come down with COVID.
So this is our morning in Yokohama. We don't know if we've been delayed.
We ended up being quarantined on the ship for over 10 days in our cabin. Jeri and I survived that, survived our marriage with it. Luckily had two friends with us who were in the cabin next door, so the four of us made the best out of our time in quarantine on the Diamond Princess.
Jeri is cutting Carl's nails, because when I tried to do it the other day,
this is true love and friendship.
Mamby-pamby.
The day after Valentine's Day, our friend Jeri came down with COVID and was whisked away along with many other passengers to hospitals in Japan. She ended up 3-4 hours away in Fukushima.
I was wrong. The first day of the quarantine was last Wednesday, not Tuesday. 4:30 in the morning. I maybe got about 6 hours of sleep. First 3, woke up, and then another 3. Sleep is becoming a huge, huge issue for me on day 3. So this is second night of very little sleep, feel a little shaky, and I think it's just a lack of sleep.
We were rescued a day later by the State Department, and then we ended up sitting on buses for 6 hours. There were about 300 Americans left on those buses.
This is part of waiting. It's been now a almost 6-hour journey.
What had happened is our tests were being sent to Tokyo, came back, and there was a delay, so there were a number of passengers on the bus that had COVID, and the State Department was trying to figure out what to do. The Japanese health department did not want us back in Japan. We ended up flying back after 6 hours. We got on the plane. It was the middle of the night. I fell asleep. 2 hours later, woke up with 103-degree fever, realized I had COVID.
Carl got a fever a couple hours into the trip. He's now in isolation there with 3 others that they did not offload, and we don't know why 3 and not others. They're now taking us to Nebraska, and we don't know what the heck's going on. So why the 3 were chosen, and it looks like there's 3 others, the spouses of the 3 are staying on the plane too. So we're off to Nebraska. What the heck, they're cleaning up the plane.
Our plane, there were 2 planes. Our plane landed at Travis Air Force Base outside of Sacramento. All the passengers got off except 3 of us who were put in quarantine. We had been in quarantine on the plane.
This is our greeting team.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
All right.
Okay, what's your name?
Brava. You got me perfect.
I was put in the biocontainment unit because I had a precondition. I had an anti-immune disease similar to Guillain-Barré syndrome that had left my hands and feet paralyzed, numb. And so they didn't want to risk my COVID with the precondition. So here's my room, and you can see that computer screen has a camera that looks out onto my bed, kind of like in a fishbowl. I spent 10 days in that unit. Jeri was put in a building about 3 blocks away. She never got COVID, despite the fact that she was totally exposed to it, both on the ship, on the bus certainly, on the plane, and it's amazing that she never got it.
Wednesday morning, Mark was diagnosed last night with a positive. Today should be day 10, but they're counting it as day 9. Hopefully today I will get tested.
And 30 days later, I was finally released, flown back here to Los Angeles. By then, COVID had still not really changed the country around. So people were freaked that I was coming back. Jeri and I had had death threats prior to that. Jeri had a really few bad incidents.
Now we have a situation where it's publicly, I mean, this is living out in real time on the news, that the husband's tested positive. They've been locked up for 14 days, so they're monitoring her. And I'm, hope and pray that she remains asymptomatic, does not test. But the community and the response is going to be an issue for them to deal with, even if it's someone being afraid to be in the same room with them.
I had vowed to stay self-quarantined for another 2 weeks so I wouldn't freak people out. 3 days into my self-quarantine, the entire state shut down and our entire attitude toward COVID changed.
I came home to Jen, Renee, Pam, and Jack.
I kidded when I was in quarantine and Jeri came back. I thought I was going to be in a Monty Python movie with the priest pulling a cart and burning and swinging some incense, saying, "Make way for the plague, make way for the plague." And that's really what it felt like back then.
Do you feel stretched?
It's been a long journey since then. The anti-immune disease got worse to the point where I was no longer walking. I could no longer type except with one finger. Peeling a banana was impossible, opening a bottle of water. And I spent probably most of 2020 in and out of hospitals, and I spent a year in a wheelchair. Today, I'm out of the wheelchair, moved over to a walker, but I still can't walk. I have braces on my feet. I type with one finger still. The numbness has not left, even though my dexterity has increased and my strength has increased through therapy. But this illness, this disease is still with me. I think part of the reason I plummeted was all that time I spent in quarantine with COVID. The doctors refused to address my anti-immune disease. And despite pleading with them to even take something as simple as vitamin C, they wouldn't let me do that. And they wouldn't let me do any of the protocols that took place. They wouldn't let me do any of the only medicine they gave me was Gatorade, which, as you know, has so much sugar in it, it probably made my anti-immune worse. But Jeri's been an angel through all this. We operated the station 50-50 until this happened. And for all of 2020, she was handling 99.9% of it. Now she's handling about 85% of it. And plus taking care of me, plus doing a lot of the chores that I can't do anymore, she's doing. So even the chores are not a 50-50 anymore. So she's been an angel with all this and struggled as a small business owner, fighting, particularly a small business owner in Los Angeles County, having the mandates be so strict against small business and so tough, and watching, being a radio station, 90% of our revenue comes from local businesses here in the community. And we have seen so many of them struggle, so many categories get wiped out because of the mandates, because of COVID. So it's very, very sad. It's heart-wrenching to watch this.
Beautiful skyline. It was a very cold, cloudy day. Hopefully tomorrow will be clear. Really hoping we'll go out to sea too. We're down tomorrow to 4 days. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Good night.